London, 1853. The Marchioness of Whitley's annual ball glittered with the finest of London society, a kaleidoscope of wealth and privilege that made Theodora Wakefield shrink further into the shadows. The ballroom's opulence only heightened her sense of displacement, crystal chandeliers suspended like frozen rain above dancers who moved with the easy confidence of those born to belong. "Theodora, for heaven's sake, stand up straight," her stepmother hissed, adjusting Theodora's pale blue gown with irritated tugs. "How do you expect to catch even a second son's attention while skulking in corners?" Theodora nodded, forcing her shoulders back even as she remained pressed against the damask-papered wall. At 23, she was firmly on the shelf, having survived 5 disappointing seasons. The whispers had followed her since her debut, the awkward, bookish girl with no fortune and unremarkable looks. The Wallflower of Grosvenor Square. "I expect nothing, stepmother," Theodora replied softly. "We both know my prospects." Lady Wakefield's mouth pinched. "Your father cannot support you forever. With your sisters coming out next year, something must be done. Something must be done." The refrain that had haunted Theodora since her father's shipping investments had begun to falter. She was a burden, unmarriageable, yet consuming resources better spent on her younger half-sisters, who possessed both beauty and their mother's social connections. Theodora's gaze drifted across the ballroom, cataloguing the familiar faces of London's elite who had dismissed her countless times before. Her earliest season had been filled with hope, believing that perhaps someone might value her mind, her quiet kindness. Now she knew better. Love was reserved for those with beauty or fortune, preferably both. She had neither. "Lady Wakefield, might I claim your company for a moment?" The Countess of Harrington approached, hardly acknowledging Theodora's presence. "Lord Pembroke has just arrived with the most scandalous news about the Duchess of O. Of course," Lady Wakefield replied eagerly, already moving away. She paused only to whisper, "Do try to look approachable, Theodora." Alone again, Theodora exhaled slowly. The musicians launched into a lively quadrille, and couples formed sets across the polished floor. No one sought her hand. No one ever did. A sudden commotion at the entrance drew everyone's attention. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, conversations faltering mid-sentence. Lord Lucas Northcote, the Marquess of Ravencroft, stood in the doorway, his imposing figure commanding instant silence. Even Theodora, who prided herself on her indifference to society's dramatics, felt her breath catch. The Marquis was infamous, a man whose very name mothers whispered to wayward daughters as a warning. Rumors of duels won and hearts broken followed him like faithful hounds. He had disappeared from London 3 years ago after some unspoken scandal, and his return now sent ripples of anticipation through the assembly. "The Devil of Mayfair returns," someone murmured nearby. "They say he killed a man in Vienna. I heard he bankrupted the Earl of Westmoreland at cards, then seduced his wife," another voice added. Theodora observed him from her safe distance. He was taller than most men present, broad-shouldered and lean, with sharp features that might have been carved from marble. His dark hair contrasted with eyes so pale they appeared almost silver in the candlelight. Unlike the colorful peacocks strutting around the ballroom, he wore unrelieved black, save for a pristine white cravat. When those silver eyes swept the room, Theodora instinctively pressed herself further into the wallpaper, though she knew she was invisible to men like him. Men who could command attention with a single glance, who moved through life taking what they wanted. The Marchioness of Whitley, ever the dutiful hostess, approached him with a nervous smile. "Lord Ravencroft, what an unexpected pleasure." "Marchioness," he replied, his deep voice carrying in the still quiet room. "I trust my invitation didn't get lost in the post for the 3rd consecutive year." A titter of nervous laughter rippled through the onlookers. The Marchioness flushed. "Of course not, my lord. You are always welcome in my home." The lie hung in the air between them. Everyone knew Ravencroft had been quietly excluded from most respectable drawing rooms since the scandal, whatever it had been. As the orchestra tentatively resumed playing, the ball's rhythm slowly restored itself, though all eyes remained surreptitiously fixed on the Marquess. He declined to dance, instead positioning himself at the perimeter of the room, observing the proceedings with detached amusement. Theodora found herself studying him with the same scholarly attention she devoted to her beloved books. There was something in his stance, a vigilance beneath the nonchalance, that spoke of a man watching for something. Or someone. When Lady Wakefield returned, she gripped Theodora's arm with unusual urgency. "We are leaving. Now." "But we've only just, now, Theodora. Your father would never forgive me if you were seen in the same room as that man." Before Theodora could protest, a deep voice interrupted. "Leaving so soon, Lady Wakefield? The evening has barely begun." Lord Ravencroft stood before them, close enough that Theodora could see the fine weave of his coat and catch the faint scent of sandalwood and leather that emanated from him. Lady Wakefield's fingers dug painfully into Theodora's arm. "Lord Ravencroft, we were just about to deny me the pleasure of meeting your stepdaughter, it appears." His silver gaze shifted to Theodora, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly seen. Not overlooked or dismissed, but examined with unsettling thoroughness. "Miss Wakefield, I presume." He extended his hand. The ballroom seemed to still around them. Theodora was acutely aware of the dozens of eyes watching this interaction with scandalized fascination. "Yes, my lord." She placed her gloved hand in his, expecting the brief touch customary in introductions. Instead, he raised her fingers to his lips, his eyes never leaving hers. "Would you do me the honor of this dance?" The question, so ordinary in any other context, fell like a thunderclap in the sudden silence. Theodora felt her stepmother's grip tighten in warning, felt the weight of society's collective gaze. She began, then stopped. In all her seasons, not once had she been asked to dance by a marquis. By anyone of consequence, really. The correct answer was to decline politely, to follow her stepmother's lead away from this dangerous man. But something in his direct gaze challenged her. As though he knew precisely what everyone expected of her, what she expected of herself, and dared her to defy it. Yes, she heard herself say, "I would be honored." Lady Wakefield's sharp intake of breath was lost as Lord Ravencroft led Theodora to the dance floor. The waltz began, and his arm came around her waist with practiced ease. "You've caused quite a stir, Miss Wakefield," he said, guiding her through the opening turn. "I believe half the matrons present are drafting letters of condolence to your father as we speak." Theodora found herself fighting an inappropriate smile. "And the other half?" "Reconsidering their daughter's prospects, now that you've captured my attention." His tone was sardonic, but his eyes remained intent on hers. "Tell me, does it bother you? The way they whisper. About you, my lord, or about me?" One dark eyebrow rose. "Are there whispers about you?" What could the respectable Miss Wakefield have done to earn society's censure? "Nothing so dramatic as whatever you've done," she replied, surprising herself with her boldness. "I merely committed the cardinal sin of being ordinary in a world that worships the exceptional." Something flickered in his expression, a brief, genuine reaction that vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. "There is nothing ordinary about you, Miss Wakefield." The waltz ended, and he bowed formally. "I thank you for the dance." Before she could respond, he was walking away, leaving her standing alone in the middle of the floor with every eye in the room upon her. For the remainder of the evening, Theodora endured her stepmother's cold fury and the speculative glances of the ton. Something had changed. She had been seen not just by Lord Ravencroft, but by everyone. For once, she was not invisible. She should have been mortified by the attention. Instead, a strange exhilaration coursed through her veins. For the first time since her debut, Theodora felt truly alive. The following morning, Theodora sat in her father's study, examining the household accounts with growing concern. Their finances had deteriorated further than she'd realized. Her father's shipping ventures were failing one by one, and their modest townhouse was now mortgaged to its limits. "There you are, my dear." Lord Wakefield entered, his once handsome face now lined with worry. "Your stepmother tells me you created quite a spectacle last night." Theodora set down her pen. "I merely danced with Lord Ravencroft." "Merely?" Her father sank into his chair with a heavy sigh. "Theodora, that man is dangerous. His reputation is no worse than a dozen other lords who gamble away fortunes and keep mistresses," she interrupted, then softened her tone. "Father, I danced one waltz. Nothing more." Lord Wakefield passed a weary hand over his face. "Perhaps it's time we considered other options for your future. Your Aunt Margaret in Yorkshire has offered." A knock at the door interrupted him. Their butler entered, bearing a silver salver. "A letter for Miss Wakefield, sir." "Delivered by messenger." Theodora accepted the thick cream envelope, noting the heavy wax seal bearing a raven's profile, Ravencroft's crest. Her father watched with narrowed eyes as she broke the seal. The message was brief, written in a bold, slashing hand. "Miss Wakefield, I request the honor of your company for a drive through Hyde Park this afternoon at 3 o'clock. My carriage shall call for you." Ravencroft. She stared at the words, hardly believing them real. "Who is it from?" her father demanded. "Lord Ravencroft," she admitted, passing him the note. "He wishes to take me driving." Lord Wakefield's face paled as he read. "Absolutely not. I forbid it." "Father, no, Theodora. That man does not call on respectable young ladies without serious intentions, and his intentions are never serious. He's seeking amusement, nothing more." The words stung, though they merely echoed her own thoughts. What interest could the Marquis possibly have in her? She was neither beautiful nor wealthy, possessed no special talents or connections worth pursuing. "You will send a reply declining his invitation," her father continued firmly. "And that will be the end of it." Later that afternoon, as Theodora sat in the small drawing room with her embroidery, she heard the distinctive sound of carriage wheels stopping before their house. From the window, she glimpsed a magnificent black carriage with the Ravencroft crest emblazoned on the door. Despite having sent a polite refusal hours earlier, Lord Ravencroft had come anyway. She heard voices in the foyer, their butler's apologetic tones, then the deeper rumble of a man's voice. Then, unexpectedly, her father's study door opening. Minutes stretched into a quarter hour, then half an hour. When the drawing-room door finally opened, her father stood there, his expression unreadable. "Lord Ravencroft would like to speak with you, Theodora." "But you said—" "I know what I said." His voice was strained. "Things have changed. Please join us in my study." Bewildered, Theodora followed her father down the hall. Lord Ravencroft stood by the window, his tall figure silhouetted against the afternoon light. He turned as she entered, and once again, that silver gaze seemed to see straight through to her core. "Miss Wakefield." He bowed slightly. "Forgive my persistence." Her father closed the door, leaving them alone, a shocking breach of propriety that indicated something momentous had occurred. my lord, she acknowledged cautiously. I sent my regrets earlier. So I was informed. A hint of a smile played at the corners of his mouth. I found myself unwilling to accept them. Theodora's hands twisted in the folds of her skirt. I don't understand why you're here. Direct, as I suspected. He moved away from the window, approaching her with measured steps. I appreciate that quality in you, Miss Wakefield. It's refreshingly rare. You hardly know me, my lord. On the contrary. I've observed you for 3 seasons now. The statement struck her speechless. 3 seasons? She would have noticed if the Marquess of Ravencroft had been watching her. Everyone would have noticed. You don't believe me, he stated, reading her expression. Understandable. When one has perfected the art of being overlooked, it's difficult to imagine anyone seeing you at all. A chill ran through her. What do you want, Lord Ravencroft? He studied her for a long moment. I want to marry you, Miss Wakefield. The words hung in the air between them, impossible and absurd. That's not amusing, she managed finally. It wasn't meant to be. His expression remained serious. I have discussed the matter with your father and secured his blessing, contingent upon your agreement. Theodora felt as though the floor had tilted beneath her feet. This makes no sense. You could have any woman in London. Not any woman. The right woman. He took another step closer. You are intelligent, observant, and discreet. You possess a quiet strength that has sustained you through years of society's indifference. You would make an excellent marchioness. The cool, practical assessment stung worse than outright rejection. How flattering. You make marriage sound like a business arrangement. Is it not? His eyes narrowed slightly. Your father's shipping company is on the brink of collapse. Your family faces financial ruin. I can prevent that. So that was it. Her father had sold her to save the family. Anger flared, hot and bright. I see. And what do you gain from this transaction, my lord? A wife who will not embarrass me with scandal or frivolity. One who can manage a household and present herself appropriately in society. A convenient ornament, she said bitterly. Something flickered in his expression, irritation, perhaps. You misunderstand me, Miss Wakefield. I do not seek an ornament but a partner. Someone with the intelligence to understand the complexities of my estates and the discretion to handle delicate matters. And you believe I possess these qualities based on what? Watching me blend into wallpaper for 3 seasons. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Based on watching you manage your father's household accounts when his clerk fell ill last year. Based on observing how you navigate social situations with quiet dignity despite the ton's cruelty. Based on noting that you spend more time in Hatchard's bookshop than any other young lady of my acquaintance. Theodora stared at him, unsettled by the evidence of his attention. You still haven't explained why. Why me, when you could choose anyone? Lord Ravencroft was silent for a moment. Because I require a wife who will not ask too many questions about my past or my business affairs. Someone who values security over romance, practicality over passion. Someone who will accept the considerable advantages I offer without demanding what I cannot give. The brutal honesty of it left her breathless. He wasn't even attempting to disguise this as anything but a transaction, her respectability and discretion in exchange for financial salvation. And if I refuse? Then I walk away, he said simply. Your father finds another solution to his financial troubles, and you continue as before. The choice is entirely yours. But it wasn't, was it? Her refusal would condemn her family to ruin. her sisters would lose their chance at suitable marriages. Her father might even face debtor's prison. "May I have time to consider?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Of course." He reached into his coat and withdrew a small velvet box. "This belonged to my grandmother. Should you accept, it would be yours." He opened the box, revealing a magnificent sapphire ring surrounded by diamonds. The stone was deep blue, the color of midnight, set in intricate platinum filigree. "I will call tomorrow afternoon for your answer," he said, closing the box and placing it on her father's desk. "Whatever you decide, the ring is yours. Consider it compensation for the imposition of my offer." Before she could respond to this extraordinary statement, he bowed and departed, leaving Theodora alone with a ring worth more than her family's entire house and an impossible choice to make. That night, Theodora couldn't sleep. She paced her small bedroom, the sapphire ring clutched in her palm. Its weight seemed to grow heavier with each passing hour. She had no illusions about marriage. Most unions among the ton were arrangements of convenience, mergers of wealth, land, or status. Love was a luxury few could afford. But something in Lord Ravencroft's clinical assessment of her virtues had struck at her deepest insecurity, that she was valued only for her utility, never for herself. Yet what choice did she have? Her father's meeting with his solicitor that evening had confirmed their dire circumstances. Without immediate financial intervention, they faced complete ruin within 3 months. As dawn streaked the sky with pale fingers of light, Theodora made her decision. She would accept Lord Ravencroft's proposal. She would become a marchioness, a fate beyond her wildest expectations, and save her family from disgrace. If the price was a loveless marriage to a man with dangerous secrets, so be it. When Lord Ravencroft's carriage arrived the following afternoon, Theodora was waiting. She had donned her best day dress, a modest gown of dove grey that emphasized the slenderness of her waist and brought out the unusual violet hue of her eyes. Her chestnut hair was arranged in a simple chignon, elegant without being ostentatious. He was shown into the drawing-room where she waited alone, her father having tactfully withdrawn to give them privacy. "Miss Wakefield." He bowed, his silver eyes assessing her with that now familiar intensity. "Lord Ravencroft." She rose, meeting his gaze directly. "I have considered your proposal. And I accept, with one condition." She lifted her chin slightly. "I wish to know why you disappeared from London 3 years ago. What scandal drove you away? If I am to be your wife, I deserve to know what whispers will follow us." A muscle tightened in his jaw. "That is precisely the sort of question I expected you not to ask." "Then you misjudged me." Theodora held her ground. "I may be practical, my lord, but I am not without courage. I will not enter this marriage blind to its challenges." For a long moment, he studied her, his expression unreadable. Then something shifted in his eyes, a reluctant respect, perhaps. "Very well. 3 years ago, I killed a man in a duel." His voice was measured, matter-of-fact. "Lord James Carrington. He had seduced and abandoned my younger sister, leaving her with child. When confronted, he refused to marry her. The child was stillborn. My sister took her own life shortly thereafter." Theodora's breath caught. "I'm so sorry." "The duel was legal, conducted according to all proper protocols," he continued. "But Carrington was well connected. His family spread rumors that I had cheated, shot him in the back like a coward. The scandal was considerable. I removed myself from society until matters cooled. And your return now? My business interests required it." He took a step closer. "Does this change your answer, Miss Wakefield?" She considered his revelation carefully. The death of a man, even in a duel, was grave indeed. Yet the protection of a sister's honor was a cause few would condemn. It explained the darkness she sensed in him, the vigilant watchfulness. A man who had lost so much would guard himself carefully against further loss. "No," she said finally. "My answer remains the same. I will marry you." Relief flickered briefly across his features. "Then perhaps you should wear this." He gestured to the sapphire ring she still held. Theodora opened her palm, revealing the gleaming jewel. With steady hands, she slipped it onto her finger. The perfect fit seemed somehow significant, as though fate had designed this moment long ago. "We will be married by special license," Lord Ravencroft stated. 2 weeks should suffice for preparations. I suggest a small ceremony at St. George's, followed by a brief wedding breakfast. "So soon?" Theodora couldn't hide her surprise. "Your father's creditors grow impatient. The sooner we are wed, the sooner I can settle his debts." He paused, his expression softening marginally. "Unless you require more time." An unexpected consideration that caught her off guard. "No," she said. 2 weeks is sufficient." He nodded, satisfied. "I shall make the arrangements." He reached for her hand, raising it to his lips in a formal gesture that nonetheless sent an unexpected warmth through her. "Until tomorrow, Miss Wakefield. I shall call to accompany you and your family to the opera, as befits a newly engaged couple." After he departed, Theodora remained motionless in the drawing-room, staring at the sapphire glittering on her finger. In a fortnight, she would be Lady Ravencroft, Marchioness to one of England's most feared noblemen. The invisible wallflower would step into the glaring light of society's attention. The prospect terrified her almost as much as the man himself. News of their engagement spread through London like wildfire. By evening, their drawing-room overflowed with calling cards and flower arrangements from people who had scarcely acknowledged Theodora's existence before. Lady Wakefield, initially horrified by the match, quickly adjusted her attitude once she realized the social advantages it would bring. "The Duchess of Harborough has invited us to her summer garden party," she marveled, reading through the morning's invitations. "And Lady Pembroke suggests you might like to join her daughter's wedding breakfast committee." Such connections, Theodora! I never imagined that anyone would find me worthy of notice. Theodora finished, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Her stepmother had the grace to look abashed. "I only meant that Lord Ravencroft is a very particular man. His choice has surprised everyone." "Including himself, I suspect," Theodora murmured. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Lord Ravencroft, Lucas, as she was now permitted to call him, appeared each day to escort her on carefully orchestrated outings designed to present their engagement to society. Drives through Hyde Park, attendance at the opera, a private viewing of art at Somerset House. Everywhere they went, curious eyes followed them. Theodora felt the weight of scrutiny, the unspoken questions. What did the infamous Marquis see in this unremarkable woman? What secret charms had she possessed to capture such a prize? Lucas treated her with unfailing courtesy, if not warmth. His hand at her elbow as they navigated crowded rooms, his attentiveness to her comfort, all were impeccable performances of a devoted fiancé. Yet there remained a distance between them, an invisible barrier he would not allow her to breach. 1 week before their wedding, Lucas invited Theodora to Ravencroft House to meet his staff and familiarize herself with what would soon be her home. The imposing mansion in Mayfair left her momentarily speechless. 3 stories of Portland stone rose before her, its classical facade speaking of generations of wealth and power. "It's rather ostentatious," Lucas commented, misinterpreting her silence as she entered the grand foyer. My great-grandfather had delusions of royal connection. It's beautiful, she countered, taking in the sweeping marble staircase and intricate plasterwork overhead. Though I imagine it requires an army to maintain. 38 staff in London, another 52 at Ravencroft Abbey in Derbyshire. He led her through to a drawing room where refreshments had been laid out. Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper, will introduce you to the key members of the household later. Theodora nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the reality of what she was undertaking. She would be mistress of this vast establishment, responsible for its smooth operation and the welfare of dozens of servants. The weight of it pressed down upon her. Lucas observed her with those perceptive eyes. Second thoughts, Miss Wakefield. Momentary panic, she admitted honestly. I've managed my father's modest household, but this. She gestured to their surroundings. You will adapt. There was no doubt in his tone. Mrs. Winters has run Ravencroft House efficiently for 15 years. She will guide you until you find your footing. And after I find my footing? Theodora asked. What role do you envision for me beyond maintaining your households? Lucas considered her question carefully. You will be my representative in society when business takes me away. You will oversee the charitable works associated with the Ravencroft name. You will bring order to aspects of my life that have been neglected. Will I warm your bed? The bold question escaped before she could reconsider it. His eyes widened fractionally, the first time she had truly surprised him. That is traditionally expected in a marriage. I'm asking about your expectations, not traditions. A tense silence stretched between them. Finally, he set down his teacup with deliberate care. I expect that aspect of our marriage to be mutually satisfactory, if not the primary focus of our union. I am not inexperienced in such matters and will ensure your comfort. The clinical response made her cheeks burn. I see. Have I offended you? No, she said, though the lie was transparent. You've merely confirmed what I already suspected. This is an arrangement of convenience, not affection. Something hardened in his expression. I have been honest about my intentions from the beginning. I never claimed romantic attachment. Nor did I ask for it. Theodora rose, needing to put physical distance between them. But neither did I expect such detachment when discussing our marital relations. Lucas stood as well, his height forcing her to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. What would you prefer, Theodora? Pretty lies about passion? Flowery declarations of desire for a woman I scarcely know. The words stung more than they should have. I would prefer respect enough to acknowledge that I am a woman with her own feelings and desires, not merely a convenient solution to your need for a socially acceptable wife. For the first time, she saw genuine emotion flash across his features, a complex mixture of surprise, irritation, and something else she couldn't name. You mistake me, he said quietly. I chose you precisely because I respect your intelligence and strength. A lesser woman would have collapsed under the weight of society's disdain years ago. You endured it with dignity. Endurance is not the same as living, my lord. His expression softened marginally. No, I suppose it isn't. He moved toward her, stopping just short of touching her. What would you have of me, Theodora? I cannot offer grand passion or romantic devotion. Honesty, she replied simply. And the chance to build something real between us, even if it begins as an arrangement. Lucas studied her face for a long moment, as though searching for deception. You are not what I expected. Nor you, me. She held his gaze steadily. Perhaps that gives us somewhere to begin. A hint of a genuine smile touched his lips. Perhaps it does. The tension between them eased, replaced by a cautious understanding. As Lucas showed her through the rest of the house, pointing out rooms that would soon be her domain, Theodora began to see glimpses of the man behind the fearsome reputation, his knowledge of art and architecture, his dry observations about his ancestors' excesses, his unexpected consideration for the comfort of his staff. By the time she departed Ravencroft House that afternoon, something had shifted between them. Not love, certainly not yet trust, but possibility. The possibility that their marriage might become more than the cold arrangement she had resigned herself to accepting. 3 days before the wedding, disaster struck. Theodora sat in the morning room, reviewing the final arrangements for the ceremony, when her father burst in, his face ashen. "The Gazette," he gasped, thrusting the newspaper toward her. "Third page." With trembling hands, Theodora turned to the indicated page. There, in stark black print, was her own name. "Society questions the hasty union between the notorious Marquess of Ravencroft and Miss Theodora Wakefield, a heretofore unremarkable young lady of limited means. Sources close to the Wakefield family reveal mounting debts and imminent financial collapse, raising speculation that the Marquess has purchased himself a bride of convenient docility. One wonders what other arrangements may exist between Lord Ravencroft and his future father-in-law, whose shipping company has miraculously escaped bankruptcy in recent days. The article continued, insinuating that her father had essentially sold her to clear his debts, questioning her virtue, and suggesting that Ravencroft had chosen her precisely because no one would believe she had attracted him through legitimate means. "Who would do this?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Lord Wakefield collapsed into a chair. "It doesn't matter. The damage is done. Every drawing room in London will be buzzing with this by noon." "Lucas must be informed," Theodora said, rising on unsteady legs. "He likely already knows." Her father's voice was hollow. "The question is whether he will cry off now that the arrangement has been exposed so crudely." The thought hadn't occurred to her. Would Lucas withdraw his offer now that their engagement had been tainted by scandal? The possibility sent ice through her veins. She hadn't realized how much she had come to depend on the future he offered, not just the financial salvation of her family, but the chance to step out of the shadows, to build a life of purpose and meaning as his Marchioness. Before she could formulate a plan, the butler appeared at the door. "Lord Ravencroft, miss." Lucas strode into the room, his expression thunderous. In his hand was a crumpled copy of the Gazette. Without preamble, he addressed Lord Wakefield. "I require a moment alone with my fiancée." Her father hesitated, glancing at Theodora. At her nod, he reluctantly withdrew. The moment the door closed, Lucas spoke. "You've seen it?" "Yes." She remained standing, facing him squarely. "If you wish to end our engagement, I will understand." Surprise flickered across his features. "End our engagement? Is that what you think of me?" "I don't know what to think," she admitted. "The article makes explicit what both of us have carefully avoided stating publicly, that our marriage is essentially a financial arrangement. And you believe I would abandon you because someone stated an uncomfortable truth." He tossed the newspaper onto a side table with disgust. "I am many things, Theodora, but not a coward." Relief washed through her, so powerful she had to grip the back of a chair to steady herself. "Then you still wish to marry me?" "More than ever." His voice was fierce. "I will not allow some society gossip to dictate my actions. But the scandal will be addressed." He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. It was the most intimate he had ever been with her, his warm fingers enfolding hers with surprising gentleness. "This changes nothing between us. The wedding proceeds as planned." Theodora searched his face, finding no hesitation, only determination. "Who do you think is behind the article?" A shadow crossed his features. "I have my suspicions. Lord Carrington's family never forgave me for his death. This may be their attempt to prevent my return to respectability through marriage to a woman of unimpeachable reputation." "Hardly unimpeachable now," she said bitterly. "On the contrary." His thumbs traced small circles on the backs of her hands, an unconscious gesture of comfort. "The article attacks me, your father, the circumstances of our engagement, but it says nothing truly damaging about you personally. Your character remains intact." She hadn't considered it from that perspective. "What do we do now?" "We appear in public together this evening at the Harbour Ball. We dance, we smile, we present a united front against this petty attack." His grip on her hands tightened. "And tomorrow, we move the wedding forward. I've already dispatched messengers to St. George's and our guests. We will be married tomorrow morning at 11. "Tomorrow?" Theodora gasped. "But the preparations are nearly complete. Whatever remains can be managed in the next 24 hours. His expression softened marginally. "Unless you object." She considered his proposal. Moving the wedding forward would demonstrate their commitment and diffuse much of the article's insinuations. It would also prevent any further attacks before the ceremony. "No," she decided. "Tomorrow is perfect." Something like approval flickered in his eyes. "Good. Pack what you need for tonight. After the Harbour Ball, you will stay at Ravencroft House with my aunt as chaperone. I want you under my protection." The decisiveness of his response stirred something unexpected within her, a warmth that spread through her chest, easing the cold knot of anxiety the article had created. He was protecting her, not abandoning her. Whatever his reasons for marrying her, Lucas Northcote was a man who stood by his commitments. That evening, they made their entrance at the Harbour Ball with calculated confidence. Lucas kept Theodora's hand firmly in the crook of his arm as they navigated the crowded ballroom, his expression daring anyone to comment on the morning's article. The Tun's reaction was a study in barely concealed fascination. Conversations faltered as they passed, only to resume in urgent whispers. Some turned away in deliberate snubs, while others approached with overly bright smiles and stilted congratulations. "Lady Pembroke looks as though she swallowed something particularly unpleasant," Lucas murmured as they completed their first circuit of the room. Despite everything, Theodora found herself smiling. "She was particularly cutting about my gown at Lady Whitley's ball last season. Called it a commendable effort at fashion. The woman wears feathers that make her resemble an agitated peacock," he replied dryly. "Her opinion on fashion should be treated with appropriate skepticism." A startled laugh escaped Theodora, drawing curious glances from nearby guests. Lucas's eyes warmed at the sound, and for a moment, they shared a genuine connection, co-conspirators in the face of society's judgment. "Dance with me," he said, leading her toward the dance floor without waiting for her response. As they took their positions for the waltz, Theodora became aware of how many eyes were upon them. "Everyone is watching. Let them." His hand settled at her waist, firm and possessive. "They're wondering if the cold, notorious Marquess is capable of feeling anything for his plain, unremarkable bride." The description hurt, though it was merely a repetition of what society had always thought of her. "And is he capable of feeling anything?" Something shifted in his gaze, a flicker of vulnerability quickly masked. "More than he would like." Before she could process this cryptic response, the music began, and they were moving together across the floor. Lucas danced as he did everything else, with precision and control, guiding her through the steps with effortless grace. For a man of his size, he moved with remarkable fluidity. "You're thinking very loudly," he observed as they turned. "I'm wondering why you dance so well for a man who avoids ballrooms." A hint of amusement touched his lips. "Dancing is a skill like any other. Mastery is simply a matter of practice and discipline." "Is that your approach to everything in life?" "Mastery through discipline." "Nearly everything." His eyes held hers with unexpected intensity. "There are some things that defy control, no matter how disciplined one's approach." The waltz ended before she could ask what he meant. As Lucas led her from the floor, a tall, elegantly dressed woman intercepted them. "Lord Ravencroft," she drawled, her cold blue eyes assessing Theodora with unconcealed disdain. "What a surprise to find you among the respectable again." Lucas stiffened beside her. "Lady Carrington. I wasn't aware you had returned to London. Just in time for your surprising nuptials." Her gaze flickered to Theodora. "Miss Wakefield, is it? How fortunate for you to secure such an advantageous match. One wonders what special qualities you possess to have captured Lord Ravencroft's attention when so many others failed." The insult was delivered with such practiced sweetness that several nearby listeners tittered appreciatively. Theodora felt Lucas's hand tighten on her arm, sensed the barely contained fury radiating from him. Before he could speak, she stepped forward slightly. "The same qualities that allowed me to recognize a worthy man beneath society's hasty judgments, Lady Carrington. Discernment is so rare these days, don't you agree?" Lady Carrington's smile froze. "Indeed. Though one must be careful not to mistake infamy for worth. Or bitterness for wisdom," Theodora countered softly. "If you'll excuse us, we were just leaving." She turned away, guiding Lucas through the crowd before he could respond to the woman's provocations. Only when they reached a relatively private alcove did she release her firm grip on his arm. "That was Lady Carrington. James Carrington's mother?" she asked quietly. Lucas nodded, his expression grim. "The very same. And likely the source of this morning's article. She despises you. With good reason, from her perspective. I killed her son." His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "What surprises me is your intervention. Most would have wilted under her attack." Theodora squared her shoulders. "I am not most, my lord. And I will not allow anyone to insult my future husband, regardless of the circumstances." Something shifted in his expression, surprise giving way to a grudging admiration. "No, you are certainly not most, Theodora Wakefield." He offered his arm once more. "Come. We've made our appearance. Let us depart before Lady Carrington can rally reinforcements." As they left the ball, Theodora couldn't help but feel she had passed some unspoken test. The realization brought both satisfaction and uncertainty. What did it mean that Lucas approved of her defense of him? Was it merely appreciation for a useful ally, or something more? The question lingered as they rode in his carriage to Ravencroft House, where his aunt, a practical, no-nonsense widow named Lady Penelope Howard, welcomed Theodora with unexpected warmth. "I've had the blue suite prepared for you, my dear," she announced, leading Theodora upstairs. "Lucas tells me the wedding has been moved to tomorrow. A wise decision, given the circumstances." In the privacy of the elegant guest suite, Lady Howard turned to Theodora with shrewd eyes. "You're not what I expected when Lucas informed me of his engagement." "I imagine not," Theodora replied, too tired for pretense. Few would expect the Marquess of Ravencroft to choose someone so unremarkable. "Unremarkable?" Lady Howard laughed softly. "My dear, any woman who could persuade my nephew to return to matrimony after he swore never to marry is far from unremarkable. Lucas is the most stubborn man of my acquaintance." His marrying me to secure a respectable hostess for his homes and a mother for his eventual heirs, Theodora said, repeating the practical reasons he had given her. There's no great mystery to it. Lady Howard's expression softened. Is that what he told you? Oh, Lucas. She shook her head. My nephew has never learned to express his feelings appropriately. His father saw to that. What do you mean? The late Marquis was not a kind man. He taught Lucas that emotion was weakness, that vulnerability invited attack. She sighed. When Lucas's sister died, something broke in him. He blamed himself for failing to protect her, for not seeing the danger Carrington presented until it was too late. Theodora absorbed this new information, pieces of the puzzle that was Lucas Northcott shifting into clearer focus. Why are you telling me this? Because tomorrow you will marry a man who has built walls so high around his heart that even he cannot find his way back out, Lady Howard replied. Someone needs to tell you that those walls, formidable as they seem, have already begun to crumble. I saw it in the way he looked at you tonight. You're mistaken, Theodora protested, though a small flame of hope kindled against her better judgment. He's been nothing but practical about our arrangement. Of course he has. That's his armor. Lady Howard patted her hand. Just remember, my dear, sometimes the most revealing truth lies in what a person doesn't say. With those cryptic words, she left Theodora alone to contemplate the morning that would transform her from Miss Wakefield, overlooked Wallflower, to the Marchioness of Ravencroft. The wedding ceremony at St. George's was brief and solemn. Theodora wore a gown of ivory silk, elegantly simple, with her mother's pearls at her throat. Lucas stood tall and imposing in formal black, his expression grave as they exchanged vows. Lucas, take thee, Theodora. His voice was steady, revealing nothing of his thoughts as he pledged himself to her. When he slipped the gold band onto her finger to join her sapphire engagement ring, his touch lingered for just a moment longer than necessary. The wedding breakfast that followed at Ravencroft House was a small but elegant affair. Only close family and a few select friends had been notified of the change in date in time to attend. Notably absent were the Carringtons and their circle, a deliberate exclusion that spoke volumes about Lucas's determination to shield Theodora from further unpleasantness. As guests began to depart, Theodora found herself watching her new husband across the room. He was engaged in conversation with her father, their heads bent together in serious discussion. Was he already arranging the financial matters that had prompted their union? The thought brought a curious hollowness to her chest. After Lady Howard's words the previous night, she had allowed herself to hope, briefly, that perhaps Lucas's interest in her extended beyond the practical. Now, observing his businesslike demeanor, that hope seemed foolish. A penny for your thoughts, my dear. Theodora turned to find Lady Howard beside her, following her gaze to Lucas. I was just adjusting to the reality of being a marchioness. The older woman's knowing smile suggested she didn't believe this for a moment. It's customary for newlyweds to depart for a wedding trip, you know. Has Lucas mentioned his plans? We're not going on a wedding trip, Theodora replied. Given the circumstances of our marriage and the recent scandal, Lucas thought it best we remain in London and present a united front to society. Lady Howard frowned. Did he, indeed? How very practical of him. He is a practical man. He is a stubborn fool, Lady Howard corrected, though there was affection in her tone. But perhaps not an entirely hopeless one. Before Theodora could ask what she meant, Lucas approached them. The last of the guests are departing, Aunt Penelope. Thank you for your assistance with the arrangements. Of course, nephew. She patted his cheek with the familiar ease of long affection. Try not to make a complete mess of things, will you? A flicker of amusement crossed his features. Your confidence is overwhelming, as always. After Lady Howard took her leave, an awkward silence fell between the newly married couple. They stood in the grand drawing-room of what was now Theodora's home, suddenly strangers despite the vows they had exchanged hours earlier. "Are you comfortable with the arrangements?" Lucas asked finally. "Mrs. Winters has moved your things to the Marchioness's suite. It adjoins mine through a connecting door." "Yes, she showed me earlier." Theodora clasped her hands tightly to still their trembling. This was the moment she had both anticipated and dreaded, the acknowledgement of their marital obligations. Lucas studied her face, his expression unreadable. "You're nervous." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes." Something softened in his gaze. "There's no need to be. I meant what I said about ensuring your comfort." The clinical reassurance did little to calm her racing heart. "Is that all marriage is to you? A series of obligations to be fulfilled comfortably?" He stilled, clearly caught off guard by her directness. "What would you have me say, Theodora? That I'm overcome with passion for a woman I barely know? That wouldn't be fair to either of us." "No," she agreed quietly. "But neither is reducing our relationship to a business arrangement with occasional physical congress." Lucas ran a hand through his dark hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "You continue to surprise me with your frankness. Would you prefer I simper and pretend?" "God, no." The vehemence in his voice startled her. "Your honesty is refreshing. Challenging, but refreshing." Theodora took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "Then let me be honest now. I entered this marriage with clear eyes, understanding its practical foundations. But I had hoped that perhaps we might build something more meaningful over time. Something beyond convenience or obligation." Lucas was silent for a long moment, his expression guarded. "I am not an easy man, Theodora. My past has made me cautious with my trust." "I'm not asking for immediate trust," she said gently. "Only the possibility of it." He moved toward her then, closing the distance between them with deliberate steps. When he stood before her, he raised one hand to lightly touch her cheek, the first truly intimate gesture he had ever offered her. "You deserve more than possibility," he said softly. "You deserve certainty and devotion. I'm not sure I'm capable of giving you what you deserve." The vulnerability in his admission made her heart ache. "Perhaps you could allow me to decide what I deserve, and what I'm willing to accept." His thumb traced the line of her jaw, his touch sending unexpected warmth through her. "My practical, surprising wife." Theodora felt the moment balanced on a knife's edge, possibility stretching before them, yet fragile as spun glass. She made her decision and stepped across the invisible boundary that had separated them since their engagement. Rising on her toes, she pressed her lips to his in a gentle, tentative kiss. For an instant, Lucas remained perfectly still, as though shocked by her initiative. Then his arms came around her, drawing her against his solid frame as he deepened the kiss with a hunger that belied his earlier restraint. When they finally broke apart, both breathing unevenly, Theodora saw naked desire in his eyes, and something more vulnerable that he quickly masked. "Well," she said, her voice unsteady, "that was considerably more than comfortable." A startled laugh escaped him, genuine and unguarded. "Indeed. Perhaps we should continue this discussion somewhere more private." The implication was clear. Heart pounding, Theodora nodded. "Yes, I think that would be wise." That night, in the dim sanctuary of the Marchioness's bedchamber, Lucas showed her that while their marriage may have begun as an arrangement of convenience, their physical compatibility was anything but. His touch was both skilled and surprisingly tender, his concern for her pleasure evident in every caress. After, as they lay entwined in the darkness, Theodora felt the barriers between them shifting, rearranging into something less defined but more promising. Not love, not yet, but the foundation for it, perhaps. "What are you thinking?" Lucas asked, his voice low in the darkness, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her bare shoulder. "That you continue to surprise me," she admitted. "I didn't expect such enthusiasm." There was a smile in his voice. "I told you I would ensure your comfort." This was considerably more than comfort, my lord. He chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest beneath her ear. "Lucas," he corrected. "I think we're well past formalities, Theodora." She smiled against his skin, savoring the intimacy of the moment. "Lucas, then." As sleep began to claim her, Theodora wondered if perhaps Lady Howard had been right. Perhaps the walls around Lucas Northcote's heart were not as impenetrable as they appeared. The weeks that followed were a period of adjustment for both of them. By day, Theodora learned the responsibilities of her new position, managing the vast household, reviewing charitable commitments, receiving callers curious to meet the new Marchioness of Ravencroft. By night, she and Lucas explored the physical aspects of their marriage with a passion that continually surprised her. Yet for all their growing intimacy in the bedchamber, Lucas maintained certain emotional distances. He spoke freely of business matters, estate concerns, even his opinions on politics and society, but rarely of his past or his deeper feelings. The walls Lady Howard had described remained partially intact, permitting physical closeness while guarding emotional vulnerability. 1 month into their marriage, Lucas informed Theodora that business required his presence in Derbyshire. "I'll be gone for approximately 2 weeks," he explained over breakfast. "The steward at Ravencroft Abbey has reported issues with the East Tenant farms that require my personal attention." "I see." Theodora carefully controlled her disappointment. "When do you depart?" "Tomorrow morning." He hesitated, then added, "You're welcome to accompany me, if you wish." The unexpected invitation caught her off guard. "You want me to come with you?" "The Abbey is your home as well," he replied, his tone carefully neutral. "You should become familiar with it. And your presence would be welcome." It wasn't a declaration of longing, but from Lucas, the admission that he wanted her company represented significant progress. "Then I shall come," she said, rewarded by the brief flash of pleasure in his eyes. Ravencroft Abbey proved to be even more impressive than the London house, a sprawling Tudor mansion set amid the rolling Derbyshire countryside. As their carriage approached through a long avenue of ancient oaks, Theodora caught her breath at the first sight of her new country home. "It's magnificent," she murmured, taking in the mullioned windows and intricate stonework. "It's been in the Northcote family for 12 generations," Lucas said, watching her reaction. "My sister loved it here." She said the city made her feel caged, but at the Abbey she could breathe. The rare mention of his sister made Theodora turn to him in surprise. Lucas seldom spoke of Sophia, the wound of her loss still evidently raw. "What was she like?" she asked gently. Lucas was silent for so long that Theodora thought he would not answer. Then, his voice soft with memory, gentle. "Kind. She saw the best in everyone even when they didn't deserve it. Especially when they didn't deserve it. Including Carrington." "Yes." His expression darkened. She believed his promises of love, his claims that his family's objections to their match would be overcome. By the time she realized his true character, it was too late. Theodora hesitated, then reached across to take his hand. "You couldn't have known, Lucas." "I should have," he replied, his voice hard. "It was my responsibility to protect her. I failed. You avenged her, she reminded him softly. Cold comfort when she lies in the family crypt. He withdrew his hand as the carriage pulled to a stop before the Abbey's entrance. Forgive me. This place holds many memories. As they entered the grand house, Theodora sensed the weight of history pressing down upon them, not just the centuries of Northcotes who had walked these halls, but the more recent ghosts of Lucas's past. Sophia's presence seemed to linger in the carefully preserved music room where her pianoforte still stood, in the garden she had loved, in the small details Lucas unconsciously mentioned as he showed Theodora through the house. That evening, as they dined in the magnificent great hall, Theodora observed her husband with new understanding. His coldness, his rigid control, these were not merely personality traits but armor donned against further loss. The death of his sister had convinced him that to care deeply was to risk devastating pain. "You're very quiet tonight," Lucas remarked as they retired to the library after dinner. "I was thinking about Sophia," she admitted. "About how much you loved her?" His expression shuttered instantly. "That's not a subject I care to discuss." "I know." Theodora moved to stand before the fireplace, gathering her courage. "But perhaps it should be. Her loss shaped you, Lucas. It continues to shape our marriage." "That's absurd," he said sharply. "Sophia's death has nothing to do with us." "Doesn't it?" She met his gaze steadily. "You blame yourself for failing to protect her. You've convinced yourself that loving someone makes you vulnerable to unbearable loss. So you keep me at a careful distance, close enough for physical intimacy, but too far to truly touch your heart." Lucas went rigid, his face a mask of controlled anger. "You presume too much." "Do I?" Theodora held her ground. "We've been married a month. You share my bed, you discuss estate matters and social engagements, but you reveal nothing of yourself. The moment I approach anything of real significance, you withdraw." "What do you want from me?" he demanded, rising from his chair with barely contained fury. "Tearful confessions? Declarations of undying devotion?" "We agreed to a practical arrangement." "No," she interrupted. "You proposed a practical arrangement. I agreed to marry a man I believed capable of more." The words hung between them, a challenge he could neither dismiss nor accept. For a moment, Theodora thought he might storm from the room. Instead, he turned away, bracing his hands against the mantelpiece, his shoulders rigid with tension. "What happened to Sophia destroyed me," he said finally, his voice low and strained. "I watched my sister, the gentlest soul I've ever known, wither away from grief and shame. I held her as she died, Theodora. And I swore I would never allow myself to be that vulnerable again." The raw pain in his voice made her heart ache. "So you built walls." "I built walls," he agreed. "I cultivated a reputation that kept people at a distance. I convinced myself that isolation was preferable to risk. And then you married me." She took a step toward him. "Why, Lucas? If you were determined to remain emotionally isolated, why choose me as your wife?" He turned then, his silver eyes dark with emotion. "Because from the moment I saw you standing alone at that ball 3 years ago, something in me recognized something in you. A strength beneath the quiet. A dignity despite society's cruelty." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I told myself it was merely admiration for your resilience. That you would make a suitable Marchioness precisely because you expected so little. But that was a lie." Theodora's heart began to race. "What was the truth?" "That even through my carefully constructed walls, you made me feel something." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "And it terrified me." The confession hung in the air between them, fragile and momentous. Theodora moved toward him slowly, stopping just short of touching him. "What did you feel, Lucas?" "Hope," he admitted, the word clearly costing him. "The possibility that perhaps I could have something I had convinced myself I neither wanted nor deserved." "And now?" she asked, hardly daring to breathe. "Now I find myself married to a woman who sees through my pretenses with alarming clarity." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "A woman I respect more with each passing day. A woman I desire with an intensity that should have diminished with familiarity but instead only grows stronger." He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek with exquisite gentleness. "A woman I'm afraid to love, because I don't know if I remember how." The admission, so honest, so vulnerable, brought tears to Theodora's eyes. "Oh, Lucas! Love isn't something you remember or forget. It's something you allow yourself to feel, despite the risk. And if I lose you?" The fear in his voice was palpable. "If I open myself to that possibility and history repeats itself?" "Then you would survive," she said simply. "Just as you survived Sophia's loss. But you would have known the joy of loving fully, instead of the hollow safety of loving partially." Something broke in his expression then, the last of the walls crumbling. With a sound that was almost a groan, he pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "Theodora," he breathed, her name a prayer on his lips. "My impossible, remarkable wife." That night, their lovemaking held a new quality, a tenderness, a vulnerability that transformed what had been physical passion into something far more profound. Afterward, as they lay entwined in the massive four-poster bed that had belonged to Northcote Marquesses for generations, Lucas traced the curve of her cheek with reverent fingers. "I think perhaps I've been falling in love with you since the moment you accepted my hand for that first dance," he admitted quietly. The wallflower who looked at the most feared man in London without flinching. Theodora's heart soared at the words she had never expected to hear. "And I've been falling in love with you since you offered me sapphires and honesty instead of pretty lies." "Not the most romantic of courtships," he observed with a wry smile. "But authentic," she countered. "Built on truth rather than illusion. I wouldn't change it." Lucas drew her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Nor would I, though I regret the pain my fears caused you. You deserved better from the beginning." "We found our way eventually," Theodora murmured, nestling against his chest. "That's what matters." As she drifted toward sleep, secure in her husband's embrace, Theodora reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From overlooked wallflower to beloved wife, from arranged marriage to genuine love, their path had been unconventional, but ultimately true. In Lucas's arms, she had found not only security and passion, but the deeper connection she had scarcely dared to hope for. And in her steadfast heart, Lucas had found the courage to risk loving again, to emerge from the shadows of his past into the light of a future neither of them could have imagined when he first claimed her hand. The tongue would always whisper, society would always judge, but none of that mattered now. In each other, the feared Marquis and the forgotten wallflower had found something rare and precious, a love built on truth, strengthened by adversity, and promised to endure.